Chapter 565 to 566. It seems that I will have to create a few more wind clones in the future to serve as backup blood tanks for the Fujin clone, muttered Kuroto with a sigh upon thinking of the high cost of preserving the Fujin clone in the future. The wind clones are created using the cells samples Kuroto collected from Kimimaro, who was already suffering from this problem, albeit on a much smaller scale, so all the clones that have been created or will be created using his cells will also suffer from the same problem. And the difference is only the degree of severity. In other words, even if Kuroto does not cultivate, train, or use these clones for any other purpose, these clones that suffer from hemorrhagic disease as soon as they are created will not be able to maintain their own body functions for a very long time and collapse soon enough. So using these clones, which are already plagued by disease curse, to act as suppliers of fresh blood for the transfusion into the Fujin clone that is on the verge of collapse is tantamount to treating these clones as disposable blood banks. Because the concentration of all-killing ash bones particles is constantly increasing in the blood. The blood of these clones also has a limited lifespan and cannot be stored normally. Nor can he repeatedly draw blood from the clone bodies, and once the blood is drawn, the used-up clones also lose their basic values. This ultimately means that if Kuroto fails to achieve any fundamental breakthrough in his biotechnology within the next few months, that will help him preserve the blood of the wind clones. He would have to consume a complete wind clone every quarterly just to ensure that the functions of the Fujin clone continue to work and don't collapse midway. Fortunately enough, Kuroto has recently managed to earn quite a lot of funds from various sources, one of these sources being the 5 Great Villages. Back when Yama rescued the shinobi of the 5 Great Villages, he had casually offered the price of rescuing each individual to the Hokage and the Tsuchikage, which both of them had accepted. When that amount is tallied, it should be several hundred million ryo. These several hundred million ryo should be more than enough to fund Kuroto's Project Godhood for the next few steps, including the cultivation and development of the new generation of Chimera buds. As for the issue of Hokage and Tsuchikage not willing to recognize the deal, Kuroto is not at all worried about this problem. After all, this time, Nagato unabashedly displayed the strength of the Akatsuki organization in front of the 5 great shinobi villages, the 4 Kage, plus an advisor elder, as well as their elite troops who had planned to carry out a surprise attack on Nagato in order to solve him with a thunderous blow, couldn't even reach up to him, and were almost killed by just one of Nagato's underlings. This just proves that the 5 great shinobi villages don't even have the power to resist Nagato's underlings, not to mention the Super Kage-class Nagato himself, who is the bearer of the rinnegan, the eyes of Rakudo Sennin. Therefore, Kuroto knows that as long as both Hokage and Tsuchikage are not idiots, they will definitely not back away from paying the promised amount to the Amatsukami, because not paying the agreed amount is equivalent to offending Amatsukami, and any qualified Kage wouldn't dare to offend Amatsukami in such a precarious situation. After all, anyone with discerning eyes can see that the Amatsukami organization is the only force in the shinobi world that can check and balance the Akatsuki organization. So rather than offending Amatsukami, the 5 great shinobi villages would opt for a wiser choice and would attempt to win over Amatsukami in order to ensure the safety of their respective villages. So, the problem of funds shouldn't be a bother for Kuroto in a short time. After reaching this conclusion, Kuroto transferred his soul back to the main body, stored the Fujin clone inside the nutrition tank, and then turned his gaze towards the other nutrition tanks with a pondering expression. Currently, there are 6 nutrition tanks in front of Kuroto in this laboratory. Of the 6, 3 are empty, while the other 3 store the Suijin, water clone, Tsukihi Homusubi, fire clone, and Fujin, wind clone. Naturally, Kuroto wouldn't be using his main body, Yama, to collect the remuneration from the Hokage, because doing such a lowly task is unacceptable for the high and mighty Yama. Therefore, Kuroto must choose a clone to complete this task. The Fujin clone is not completely healed, so Kuroto wouldn't risk using it either. As such, he has only two options left to him. The first is the Suijin clone, while the other is the Tsukihi clone. Suijin clone was created using Haku's cells, and Haku's cells were almost non-aggressive, so the appearance of the Suijin clone was quite similar to that of Kuroto when it was created. But that was only the case when it was created, with the passage of time, which has brought the increase of Kuroto's age. Those similarities are no longer so obvious, considering different physical growth. The main body has grown quite impeccably as the physique of a young man is supposed to develop, but that is not the case with the Suijin clone, whose physique has developed into that of a trap, quite similar to that of Haku. Of course, even with these different body types, the facial features of the Suijin clone are quite similar to that of Kuroto, and these similarities in the facial features are still somewhat recognizable upon closer notice, not to mention the highly conspicuous Byakugan. If the situation in the village escalates, and Suijin's mask is somehow destroyed, then there will be an issue of Kuroto's cover being blown away. As such, Kuroto will definitely not use Suijin clone either. With all the other options rejected, Tsukihi clone was the only option left, and Kuroto decided to go along with it. After making the decision, Kuroto didn't waste too much time and took out the Tsukihi clone from the nutrition tank, dried off the water, and then implanted the pair of Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan into the eye sockets of the Tsukihi clone. With that done, Kuroto used Tenseigan Soul Descend to transfer his soul into the Tsukihi clone. One side of Kuroto's eyes closed at the same time. Tsukihi's eyes opened, and she slowly sat up from the operating table. This feeling... Tsukihi shook her head slightly and sighed. The problem was not the ever-increasing bust to which she has almost gotten used by now, but the strange dizziness and headache she felt. Because this pair of Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan in her eye sockets was obtained through the most orthodox method, as such, the visual prowess of this pair of Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan is extremely strong, and the visual prowess has further increased and changed after being stimulated by the high-potent Yang chakra of the Hashirama cells during the cell transplantation operation in Shisui, to the point that this pair of Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan in her eye sockets seemed to have come to life as if it has a pulse and heartbeat of its own that is constantly beating in rhythmic beats. This is the first time Tsukihi is able to clearly feel this alive sensation from this pair of Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. Is it because I am not the original awakener of these eyes? Muttered Tsukihi with a thoughtful look on her face. The trait alive in this pair of Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan is obviously a manifestation of a sense of independence. Tsukihi is not completely unfamiliar with this sensation, as she has felt the same alive sensation from the giant Tenseigan on the moon while being in the resonant state with it. The reason why the giant Tenseigan on the moon has the alive sensation is that it is a combination of thousands of pairs of Byakugan. Thus, it contains unimaginable spiritual power from thousands of Otsutsuki clansmen. And the fact that the Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan has also started to gain a similar, albeit much weaker, alive sensation means that a spiritual presence of Uchiha Hideki and Uchiha Ryota power has started to manifest. After perceiving this sensation carefully, Tsukihi couldn't help but conclude these eyes really do seem to manifest the spiritual presence of Uchiha Ryota and Uchiha Hideki. Although, from what I can feel, it's just their instinctive presence, not their complete sense of self. And Tsukihi felt that this is not such a strange phenomenon. After all, Sharingan is the manifestation of one's spiritual essence. Tsukihi is very certain of this because, with the improvement of knowledge and experience, her understanding of the mysterious realm of the soul has also started to become somewhat clear, so the eternal mystery named Sharingan has also been unveiled to her to some extent. In the final analysis, Sharingan, The eyes that reflect the heart is actually just an organ unique to the bodies of the Uchiha clansmen that helps in the external manifestation of their spiritual power, i.e. the yin chakra. Since Sharingan is just an organ that manifests yin chakra, then the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan is also the same organ, with the only difference being the fact that the quality and concentration of yin chakra it has manifested is very high in comparison to the Sharingan. From this, we can further conclude that the essence of rinnegan is just the combination of high quality and high concentration yin and yang chakra. The combination of Indra chakra and the Asura chakra just happens to be the only and easiest source in the shinobi world to meet the requirements of obtaining high quality and high concentration yin and yang chakra. But this doesn't mean that the combination of Indra and Asura chakra, or acquisition of the Rikudo chakra, is the only necessary condition to awaken the rinnegan. They are not the only condition, but just one of the many possible ways to awaken the rinnegan. The key point here is the high quality and high concentration yin chakra and yang chakra. As long as these two requirements are met, no matter the source from where they originate, awakening rinnegan shouldn't be impossible. After carefully experiencing the changes in the pair of eternal Mangekyo Sharingan in her eye sockets, Tsukiji slowly drew up some conclusions that are of major significance. First, the most significant and obvious change is definitely the increase in the visual prowess of the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, and this enhancement is the kind of enhancement that can be clearly felt. As per Tsukihi's own estimation, she'd say her visual prowess has increased by 25 to 30%, which is a lot. The second and most surprising change is the rejection phenomenon. And last but not the least, the pair of eternal Mangekyo Sharingan are trying to influence Tsukiji, her emotions, and her thought process. After recording all these conclusions on her test leg, Tsukiji was lost in thought. The increase in visual prowess was not that surprising considering the yang chakra stimulation that the eyes have received. But the sudden rejection phenomenon surprised Tsukiji, as there was no such case before, and she didn't expect it to appear either. The most reasonable speculation to explain the rejection phenomenon is the increase in visual prowess. And if we go by this scenario, then the eye's attempt to influence Tsukiji's thoughts and emotions is brought by this rejection phenomenon. The aforementioned explanation seems quite self-explanatory, as the increase in the visual prowess has brought an alive characteristic to the eyes, and since the eyes now contain the manifestation of Ryota and Hideki's instinctive thoughts, so they seem to be trying to reject Tsukiji, who is not the original awakener of the eyes, at the same time influence her. Although quite a dangerous situation, this is not a bad thing for Tsukiji. Because these observations, speculations, and explanations clearly show that the pair of eternal Mangekyo Sharingan has indeed changed after being stimulated by the yang chakra of Hashirama cells, and is essentially different compared to a few months back. In fact, it wouldn't even be wrong to say that these eyes are now in an evolutionary state somewhere higher than the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan and lower than the rinnegan. As for the reason why they failed to evolve into the rinnegan, Tsukiji speculates that the reason is probably either the lack of sufficient yin chakra or the yang chakra in terms of quality and quantity, or that the host who was used for the evolution process did not meet all the required standards. After all, Shisui, who was used as a host, wasn't the original awakener of these eyes, so it's not too surprising. If Tsukiji were to use Uchiha Madara's Rinnegan awakening as a reference, at the time of transplanting the Hashirama cells, he was already standing at the pinnacle of the shinobi world, and even then, only decades after the transplantation of Hashirama cells. By the time he was reaching his death, did the Rinnegan awaken. From Madara's reference, it can be seen that for the evolution of eternal Mangekyo Sharingan to Rinnegan, the amount of chakra required should have been very high. And if we go along with this speculation, does that mean these eyes will evolve when the chakra requirements are met? Perhaps a special scenario has to be created to meet the chakra requirements necessary for the evolution. With this thought in mind, Tsukihi dressed up herself, disguised as Homusubi, and then left Angkor Vantian. In an underground base. Slurp, slurp, slurp. The sound of slurping continued to echo as a certain blonde-haired kid was busy gulping down cups of ramen. From the casual and unrestrained way of eating without minding his location, it didn't appear as if he was kidnapped, and even he didn't seem to have the consciousness of being a hostage. Looking at this scene, the readers can only sigh. Well, that's Uzumaki Naruto for ya. At the same time, the black-hired girl with the bob cut and pure white eyes sitting next to him seemed rather timid, which was much more normal given their circumstances, and she was barely eating in small bites while vigilantly looking around in fear. While the two kids, we being themselves, a figure walked out of darkness. Hinata's expression shrank. She quickly put aside her cup of ramen and clutched onto Naruto's jacket as she timidly looked at the person walking towards them. Seeing Hinata's reaction, Naruto looked at the incoming person and shouted towards him with an angry expression, "Orochimaru! Don't even think about hurting my friend!" Indeed, the figure that walked out of the darkness is not someone else, but Orochimaru, who kidnapped Naruto and Hinata from the refugee shelter. Obviously, Naruto doesn't know or realize who exactly is Orochimaru, but back when they were in the refugee shelter, Naruto had heard Anko yelling the opposite man as Orochimaru, so the innocently ignorant and oblivious Naruto also directly referred to him as Orochimaru. Compared to Naruto, who doesn't know anything about who or what the name Orochimaru represents, Hinata, being the first princess of the Hyuga clan, has obviously heard the name of the snake Sanin Orochimaru, which is why she also realizes the horror of the man walking towards them and doesn't dare to look up at him. As they say, sometimes ignorance is also a bliss. Orochimaru chuckled and walked over without paying any mind to Naruto's warning, nor did he seem to care about Naruto's ignorance. Naruto didn't know Orochimaru's meaning, but seeing the other party coming towards them, he quickly emptied his cup of ramen in one single bite. Then, with his mouth filed up, he hurriedly stood in front of Hinata, guarding her against Orochimaru, and questioned, "Oi, o Woimau, wazu iu hanhuzu su'er?" "Oi, Orochimaru, what do you want to do to her?" Looking at Naruto trying to protect Hinata, even with his mouth filled with ramen, Orochimaru stretched out his hand, coiled it around Naruto, and flung it to the side, then reached out his hand to lift Hinata's chin and looked into her pure white eyes. If this action was performed by someone other than Orochimaru, especially a certain blonde-haired kid, Hinata would have made Hinata blush in embarrassment, which might have either led to a doki doki and dare moment, or she might have become unconscious with steam coming out of her head. But because the other party is Orochimaru, such a thing was obviously impossible. In fact, being stared at by Orochimaru's snake-like pupils and being subjected to his murderous pressure, Hinata shivered. She was so afraid that she didn't even dare to breathe at all. "Orochimaru, let Hinata go." Seeing Orochimaru seemed to be having some ideas about Hinata, Naruto, with his sense of justice, shouted and was about to rush towards him. "Arr! Snake! Where did these snakes come from?" But just as Naruto was about to get up, he realized that he was unable to move for some reason. He quickly looked down and noticed that his hands and feet were being bound by several snakes that were staring at him as if they will bite him the very next moment, making Naruto dare not make any careless moves. With Naruto quieted down, Orochimaru continued to observe Hinata's eyes, and after finding nothing worth attention, he shook his head in disappointment. Byakugan, although one of the three great dojutsu, it doesn't seem to have anything special that would make it comparable to the Sharingan and the Rinnegan. As more and more Uchiha clansmen with Mangekyu Sharingan appeared in the shinobi world, and as the presence of Nagato with the Rinnegan became more and more dominating, the reputation of the Byakugan that has been considered as one of the two major dojutsu of Konoha alongside the Sharingan fell to the bottom, and people even start to wonder if being considered one of the three great dojutsu is a bit of an exaggeration and misnomer for the Byakugan. After all, the Hyuga clan has no notable people who can compare themselves with the likes of Mangekyo Sharingan, awakeners of the Uchiha clan, and the rinnegan bearer Nagato. Orochimaru has also studied the Byakugan, but he found nothing too attractive about it. In addition to the outstanding investigative ability and the ability to see through the chakra points of the enemies, Byakugan has close to zero performance in other aspects, so Orochimaru soon lost interest in the Byakugan and was attracted towards Sharingan, specifically towards the Mangekyo Sharingan and the rinnegan, because of their wonderful and mysterious origin and abilities. Bored upon not getting what he wanted, Orochimaru released Hinata and also recalled the snakes that tied up Naruto's hands and feet. Upon regaining his freedom, Naruto hurried towards Hinata, and while protecting her, he said to Orochimaru, "It doesn't matter if you have caught me, Orochimaru, but do you even know who she is? Hinata is from a famous shinobi clan from the village called... It seems to be called... what was it called again? Well, whatever. She is from a famous shinobi clan. If you dare to hurt her, the people from her clan will not spare you." Naruto is still not that much aware of the concept of the noble society, especially the meaning and powers of the shinobi clans such as the Uchiha and the Hyuga. But after spending a lot of time with Sasuke and always listening to Sasuke's boasting about the Uchiha clan as the first and the strongest clan of Konoha, he has come to understand that children like Sasuke and Hinata are born differently from civilians like him. Children like Sasuke and Hinata who are part of the major shinobi clans, such as the Uchiha and Hyuga, are born naturally superior to the civilians like him. They are not your run-of-the-mill people who can be provoked so easily. Even the ordinary villagers don't dare to mess around with them. Seeing Naruto's serious look as he earnestly explained all this to Orochimaru, Orochimaru couldn't help but think of the man named Namikaze Minato, Konoha's Yellow Flash, the man who had bested Orochimaru and became Konoha's Yondaime Hokage. Looking at the child of that man standing in front of him, Orochimaru sneered, the corners of his lips arched, and he asked Naruto in a gentle tone, "Boy, are you aware of who our parents are?" Upon listening to Orochimaru's sudden question, Naruto's words came to a sudden pause. His entire aura became lonely, and he barely nodded. Does this kid knows the identity of his parents? Orochimaru was a little surprised and muttered, "Is it possible that someone in the village violated Sarutobi-sensei's order and informed Naruto of the identity of his parents?" After the death of the Yondaime couple, Sandaime Hokage had issued an order to keep the identity and the life experience of Naruto's parents a secret from him, and Orochimaru didn't think that anyone in the village would dare to blatantly violate Sandaime Hokage's order regarding such a serious matter. As such, he didn't consider the possibility that Naruto would be aware of the identity of his parents. In the first place, the number of people who are aware of Naruto's true identity is very few, so Orochimaru was more surprised upon learning this information. At the same time, he became curious about the person who dared to inform Naruto the real identity of his parents, and Orochimaru was also interested in that person's intentions behind leaking such a piece of secret information to Naruto, so he questioned, "Who told you?" Naruto kicked the stone beside his feet and replied absently, "Everyone says." "Everyone?" Orochimaru frowned and questioned, "What does everyone say? Who are your parents?" Naruto whispered lightly, "The nine-tailed demon fox."